Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're jumping into one of the most famous stories in the Bible, Jesus turning water into wine. But what if it wasn't just a miracle to save a wedding party from embarrassment? According to a sermon by Stephen Wilhoit, this was a carefully crafted sign that points to something way, way bigger. So let's get right into it.
So here's the big question the sermon tackles. How in the world does a party foul at a wedding in ancient Galilee connect to this massive theological idea called the New Covenant? I know, it seems like a huge leap, but that's exactly what we're here to unpack.
The sermon really boils the entire meaning down to this one powerful idea. Think of this as our roadmap for the whole story. Our sin kept us out, but the new covenant gets us in. Let's see how the story builds this case, step by step.
All right, so before we can really appreciate the solution, this new covenant, we've got to wrap our heads around the problem it's trying to solve. And as the sermon frames it, that problem is all about distance. The starting point is this idea of a separation between us and God. In this theological framework, sin creates a gap, a distance that keeps people from getting truly close to a perfectly holy being. You could get near, but never all the way. Now, to make this pretty abstract idea feel real, the sermon uses an analogy that's, surprisingly modern: social distancing. Just like we all kept our distance to stop a virus from spreading, this spiritual distance was seen as a way to protect humanity from the overwhelming power of a perfectly holy presence. The sermon offers another really powerful image. Think of God's holiness like the sun. It's beautiful, it gives life, but if you're a sinner who gets too close, you get consumed. The old covenant, you see, was kind of a system for managing that distance, but it couldn't actually fix the core problem. Okay, so now let's go to where the action happens, a wedding. And this isn't just any old party. A wedding in that culture, it's the absolute perfect stage for a message about covenants. So, first things first, what even is a covenant? Because it's not just a simple promise. In the Bible, it's a formal, structured agreement that defines the entire relationship between God and his people. It's a really big deal. And these things had a real structure, almost like a legal treaty. You've got the parties involved, the history of their relationship, the promises, the consequences, you've got witnesses, and even terms for how it ends. And when you think about it, a wedding ceremony lines up with this perfectly, right? You've got vows, witnesses, and that till death do us part clause. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. If every wedding is a symbol of the relationship between Christ and his people, then Jesus isn't just a guest. The sermon points out this huge irony in the text. Jesus also was invited. Think about it. You don't invite the groom to his own wedding. He's the host. This little detail is a clue that Jesus is the true bridegroom here. All right, every good story needs some drama, and this one shows up right in the middle of the party. You could call it a supply chain crisis. The problem? It's simple, but it's a big one. They have run out of wine. The celebration, the joy, it's all about to come to a screeching halt. Now, you have to understand, this was way more than just an awkward moment. In that culture, this was a full-blown catastrophe. It brought profound public shame on the family. And even worse, the groom could actually be legally sued for failing to provide for his guests. I mean, this couple was facing the real possibility of starting their entire marriage in disgrace and debt. And this is the moment Jesus steps in. But, and this is the key, his solution isn't just about fixing the wine situation. The sermon argues that every single detail of what he does next is loaded with symbolic meaning. So listen to how specific Jesus' instructions are. He points to 6 stone jars that were used for purification rites. Now, in the Gospel of John, there are no throwaway details, and that number 6 is the key to unlocking the whole symbol. So, why 6? Okay, so think of it like this. In the Bible, the number 7 is all about perfection, right? Completeness. So 6? 6 is what falls short. It's incomplete. These 6 jars used for these external purification rituals, they symbolize the entire Old Covenant system. A system that was good, for sure, but according to this view, it was ultimately not enough to solve the core problem. So let's really put these two side by side. The old way, the water in those stone jars, was about external cleansing. It was incomplete, symbolized by that number 6, and its basis was stone, rigid laws. But the new wine, that represents something totally different. It's about an internal cleansing that is complete and that actually transforms the heart. And here is the absolute kicker. Jesus doesn't just make more wine, he makes the best wine.
The master of the feast is totally shocked. Normally, you serve the good stuff first. By saving the absolute best for last, Jesus is making a powerful statement. The new covenant he brings isn't just a sequel. It's the superior, final, and best reality.
Okay, so what's the bottom line here? What does this new and better covenant actually promise? Let's recap the big takeaways from the sermon.
And it all comes back to our central theme. The entire sign, the failed wine, the incomplete jars, the superior new wine, is all designed to illustrate this one powerful truth.
And this really breaks down into three huge promises. First, it's a door open to everyone, regardless of who you are. Second, it offers a real cleansing from the inside out, not just an external one. And finally, it provides a permanent, joyful communion with God, not one that's temporary or at a distance.
And the sermon points out one last incredible detail. The story begins on the third day, a phrase that would have immediately screamed resurrection to anyone reading it back then. And this is explicitly called the first of 7 signs in John's Gospel. The whole story is bookended with these themes of new life and divine perfection.
So let's end on this thought. When you stop seeing this story as just a miracle, a supernatural party trick, and you start seeing it as a sign, the whole meaning just shifts, doesn't it? It becomes less about the wine and more about what the wine points to, a new, better, and final way for all of us to connect with God. It really makes you wonder, what other signs might be hiding in plain sight?